The central United States has not had a break, not a real one. For the better part of April 2026, storm after storm has rolled across the plains and the Midwest, and now the atmosphere is reloading once again. Another severe weather threat is building tonight and into the coming days across a corridor stretching from northern Oklahoma all the way up through the plains and into Minnesota. And meteorologists tracking this setup say the ingredients are locking into place for a dangerous night of supercells, large hail, and tornadoes across communities that are already storm-weary and, in some cases, still cleaning up from the last outbreak. Let's put this in context first, because the April 2026 severe weather season has been one of the most relentless in recent memory for the central United States. The NWS office in Chicago noted that the region had already seen severe weather outlooked for 15 separate days between January 1st and April 19th of this year, including an unusually high number of days elevated to a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk or higher. A corridor stretching from eastern Iowa through southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois has been what forecasters are describing as a hotspot, hit repeatedly by tornadoes, damaging winds, and destructive hail events within the same 2-month window. The lower Great Lakes region specifically has been tracking as one of the most active severe weather zones in the country so far this year by any measure. The outbreak that struck on April 17th stands as the most significant single event in this extended run. A level 4 out of 5. Moderate risk was in effect that day from northwest Oklahoma to western Missouri, covering Kansas City and Wichita. A fresh surge of jet stream energy had tapped into Gulf moisture during the afternoon hours, setting up classic supercell conditions across the region. By the time the day was over, at least 75 tornadoes had been confirmed across the heartland, a number that represents a major outbreak by any historical measure. Among the most destructive was a large, long-tracked EF3 tornado that passed through southern Kankakee, Illinois, damaging over 500 buildings and killing one person before crossing into Indiana and striking Lake Village, where it killed 2 additional people. Wind gusts topping 85 miles per hour were recorded across the region, and hailstones in the Kankakee area potentially reached 5 to 6 inches in diameter, a size that, if confirmed, would break the Illinois state record. The prior week before that had already brought tornado watches covering more than 22 million people across the south central plains and parts of the upper Midwest. Wisconsin took repeated direct hits during this extended period. The town of Montana in Wisconsin saw numerous structures destroyed by a violent tornado. A confirmed tornado hit near Union Center after the National Weather Service issued a rare, particularly dangerous situation tornado warning, one of the most urgent alerts in the NWS toolkit, reserved for situations where violent, potentially long-track tornadoes are imminent. In Ringgold, Wisconsin, drone footage captured the scale of structural damage left across the community after the April 17th event. Power outages from these storms left more than 50,000 homes and businesses without electricity across Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Oklahoma simultaneously. Flooding on top of all of that hit Michigan and Wisconsin, with rivers reaching major or record flood levels in more than 20 locations. The Wolf River in Wisconsin crested nearly a foot above its record flood stage, putting streets in the village of Shiocton under as much as a foot of water. Now the storm threat is reloading. The Weather Prediction Center's short-range forecast discussion issued on April 21st stated directly that severe weather threats increase Thursday for much of the plains. A deep upper-level low and its associated surface frontal system are progressing eastward across the western United States, and as it does, it is drawing Gulf moisture northward into the Missouri and Mississippi valleys. Where the advancing cold front meets that warm, humid air mass, the atmosphere destabilizes rapidly. The Storm Prediction Center is watching a setup from northern Oklahoma through to southern Minnesota, a corridor that covers roughly 10 million Americans, where a dry line, a cold front, and a potential secondary low-pressure system are converging. In this kind of atmospheric configuration, supercell thunderstorms are not just possible, they are the expected storm mode. Understanding what makes a setup like this dangerous requires understanding what supercell thunderstorms actually are. A supercell is not just a severe thunderstorm. It is a rotating thunderstorm. The rotation develops when horizontal wind shear, meaning winds blowing at different speeds or different directions at different altitudes, gets tilted into the vertical by the powerful updraft of a developing storm. Once that rotation is established in the mid-levels of the storm, the supercell becomes capable of sustaining itself for hours and moving in a way that separates it from ordinary storm cells. Supercells are the storms responsible for the vast majority of violent tornadoes rated EF2 and above, for baseball-sized and larger hail, and for destructive straight-line wind events called derechos, when they cluster into bow-shaped lines. The forecast environment across the Central Plains for Thursday night features the kind of deep layer wind shear and atmospheric instability that meteorologists specifically associate with supercell development, MLKP values, a measure of how much energy the atmosphere has available to fuel updrafts, are expected to reach 1,500 to 2,500 joules per kilogram across portions of the southern plains, with values over 1,000 joules per kilogram possible farther north into Minnesota. Those are significant numbers. The hail threat in this setup deserves specific attention because the April 2026 season has already been extraordinary for hail size across the region. During the April 14th and 15th outbreak, supercells near Madison, Wisconsin produced giant hail up to 3.25 inches in diameter, comparable to a tennis ball, causing significant damage to vehicles, roofs, and outdoor property across multiple communities. During the April 17th outbreak, hailstones in the Kankakee area potentially reached 5 to 6 inches, softball-sized and above. Baseball-sized hail was also reported across parts of southern Minnesota and eastern Kansas that same week. Hail of that scale, falling at terminal velocity from tens of thousands of feet, carries enough kinetic energy to shatter car windows, punch through residential roofing, damage agricultural crops at a scale that affects entire growing seasons, and injure or kill anyone caught in the open. The renewed severe weather setup this week is once again placing large hail as one of the primary threats, with the Storm Prediction Center noting supercells would be favored if storms develop and that large hail and severe wind gusts would be possible across the corridor. NOAA's Storm Prediction Center also rolled out a significant update to the way it communicates severe weather threats at the start of March 2026, and this new system is directly relevant to understanding how to read the current outlook. The new conditional intensity groups, which launched on March 3rd, add a layer of severity information on top of the existing risk categories. Rather than just telling the public that a severe storm risk exists, the new system now communicates how intense any storms that do develop are likely to be. For tornadoes, the system distinguishes between EF0 and EF1 scale events, and the more destructive EF2 and above category. For hail, it distinguishes between storms capable of 2-inch hail and those capable of hail exceeding 3.5 inches. For wind, it flags setups where bow echoes or derechos with gusts above 85 miles per hour are possible. Warning coordination meteorologist Evan Bentley of NOAA's Storm Prediction Center stated that high-end severe weather like intense and violent tornadoes cause by far the greatest loss of life and property, and the new system allows forecasters to highlight days when those specific threats are more likely. When the current outlook activates conditional intensity flagging alongside a severe weather risk, that is the signal to take the forecast seriously at the household level, not as a distant atmospheric curiosity. For the communities sitting in the threat area tonight, the practical priorities are straightforward, but they require actual action rather than passive awareness. Know where your shelter location is before the storms arrive. In a house with a basement, that means the lowest level, away from windows, ideally under a staircase or a heavy workbench. In a house without a basement, that means an interior room on the lowest floor, a bathroom or a closet with no exterior walls. In a mobile home or manufactured structure, that means leaving and getting to a solid building. Mobile homes offer essentially no protection from a tornado, regardless of their tie-down status. And the statistics on tornado fatalities consistently show that mobile home occupants are disproportionately represented among those killed in tornado events. Do not wait to see the tornado before taking shelter. By the time a tornado is visible from your window, it may already be within striking distance. Understanding how warnings work also matters tonight. The National Weather Service issues 2 distinct alert types for tornado threats. A tornado watch means atmospheric conditions are favorable for a tornado development across a defined area, and that people should be prepared to act. A tornado warning means a tornado has either been confirmed by a storm spotter or trained observer on the ground, or has been detected on Doppler radar by the characteristic radar signature called a tornado vortex signature. A tornado warning is the signal to take shelter immediately, not to go outside and look. The gap between when a warning is issued and when a tornado strikes can be minutes, sometimes less. Having already identified your shelter location and having a way to receive the warning, whether through a weather radio, a smartphone app with push alerts enabled, or outdoor sirens, is what turns that lead time into actual safety. The broader severe weather season context for 2026 adds weight to what is developing tonight. AccuWeather meteorologists forecast between 1,050 and 1,250 tornadoes across the United States for the full year, broadly in line with a historical average of 1,225. But as AccuWeather meteorologist Alex Duff has put it, the total count does not capture the full picture. It only takes one storm striking a densely populated or vulnerable community to make a season devastating, regardless of where the annual total ends up. April 2026 has already demonstrated that point graphically. 3 people killed in the Kankakee and Lake Village events, hundreds of structures destroyed in multiple states, rivers above record flood stage, Tens of thousands left without power in the middle of a week that kept reloading new rounds of storms every 24 to 48 hours, without giving affected communities meaningful time to recover between events. The reload tonight is part of that same broader pattern. A long wave trough anchored over the western United States is expected to persist through the forecast. Period. Acting as a recurring engine that keeps pulling moisture northward from the Gulf, destabilizing the atmosphere and generating new rounds of convective activity across the plains and the Midwest. The pattern is not breaking down this week. The reprieve that storm-weary communities across Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan need is not arriving tonight. What is arriving tonight is another organized severe weather event in a month that has already set a high bar for intensity and impact, and the people in its path deserve to be prepared before the first cell fires. Check the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook for your specific area. Enable severe weather alerts on your phone right now if you have not already. Know where you are going when the sirens go off. Do not assume the storm will miss you because the last one did. The central United States has absorbed round after round this April, and the atmosphere is not done yet. There's one more dimension to tonight's threat that frequently goes underappreciated until it is too late, and that is the nighttime factor. A significant portion of the tornado fatalities recorded in the United States occur during nighttime events, and the reason is simple. People are asleep. Outdoor warning sirens cannot be heard through closed windows in a bedroom with background noise. A tornado warning issued at 2 a.m. for a county where most residents are asleep carries far less protective value than the same warning issued at 2 p.m. The overnight and pre-dawn hours are when weather radio devices and phone-based push alerts become genuinely life-saving tools rather than conveniences. If this storm system produces its most intense activity during the late evening or overnight hours, which is a realistic possibility given the timing of the synoptic forcing, then the communities in the threat zone need to have a plan that accounts for the possibility of being woken up by an alert rather than hearing sirens while they are already awake. Farmers and agricultural operations across the affected corridor also face a specific threat that extends beyond tonight. The April 2026 severe weather season has already inflicted serious crop damage across large portions of the central United States. Winter wheat conditions across Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Colorado were already rated in poor to very poor condition in large percentages before this latest round. Hailstorms during the mid-April outbreaks damaged emerging crops and fruit orchards that had advanced ahead of schedule because of the early warm weather. Another round of large hail across the same agricultural corridor tonight compounds losses that were already accumulating. The USDA had flagged extraordinary weather volatility as one of the key risk factors for the 2026 growing season, and tonight's setup is another entry in that ledger. The central United States is not new to this. This region sits at the intersection of cold, dry air from Canada, warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, and dry, hot air from the desert Southwest. And when those three air masses collide in the right configuration, the atmosphere does what it does here better than almost anywhere else on the planet. Tornado Alley is not a nickname. It is an accurate description of the geography and the atmospheric dynamics that make this part of the world the most tornado-prone region on Earth. The communities here have generations of experience with severe weather. They have built storm shelters, established warning systems, trained storm spotters, and developed a cultural literacy around weather threats that does not exist in most other parts of the country. That experience matters. Tonight, it needs to be put to use.